us, and this whole arena of what's called land acknowledgement is something many people are getting interested in, and we are. And so I know you've been working with a lot of people about it, and what a great thing for us to have you with us tonight. So I see there are a few more people. So I don't know, Joseph, you want to make your way over here, and do you have some jokes you can tell us while we're getting ready or not? All right. I'm going to make sure I'm going to ask our youth to come in. There's somebody I know. Carol. Wow. Great to see you.
I hope I share some interesting things with you probably may not know. And it's not my intention to hurt anybody's feelings, so just to know that. So
I'm going to move this out of the way. You can all see him. And then people on Zoom, right? You can see Joseph. Take care of this little technical thing. We have got it. There we go. All right. I think we can get started.
Okay.
So again, welcome Joseph Standing Bear to St. Mark's. Thank you for being with us.
It's an honor and privilege to be here tonight, and I hope that I'm talking clear from my heart. To know Native people, you have to know about some figures and facts that most are not aware of. For instance, how many know how many billion acres we have in North America? That's actually part of Turtle Island, where our Native people. It's actually 2.39 billion acres. Now, when you think about that, 2.39 billion acres, just the United States alone. You know, and of that, we had over 350 languages, which we only have 150 left now. Unfortunately, we do have the highest suicide rate, the highest dropout rate, the highest drug addiction, the highest unemployment. So our leaders are really struggling with finding methods and ways to uplift our people. It's really a difficult thing. When I was a young boy, my grandmother was one of those that was taken to a boarding school, which I will talk about a little later on. You know, and I was always interested in what happened to the people there. And of all the years I knew my grandmother, asked her many times. She'd look at me, her eyes would glaze over, and she'd walk away. Could never speak one single word what happened to the boarding school to her during those days. And a little bit about that, I think I'll touch on that now a little bit. When the colonists came, you know, they were kind of, they were down on their luck. They didn't have a lot of food, and they were really sick, and unfortunately, their illnesses they brought within about 50 years, most people agree, wiped up to half of our people just from the disease spreading. We had no immunity to it. So when we were still out east, and there was a lot of fighting going on, you know, it was kind of easy in those days to have a little war and, you know, and get away with it too much. But as we were pushed further and further west, the press started following our people around and the military around. And we started getting this romanticized, you know, image of the noble savage, rather. And it was getting harder for the military actually to out and out, you know, kill you. So what happened was back in the 1880s, 1870s, there was a general. And he had the idea, and on the surface it looked like it was a good thing. He said, we're going to take these native kids and we're going to teach them our way, and they're going to be so much better off, and blah, blah, blah. But the thing of it is, what he knew was that our people share our language and our ideas by sitting down and talking amongst ourselves. You know, we listen to the elders. So he knew if he could break that chain would deal with severe blow to our people. So what he did was, this thing passed, and they would come to your house, to your village, and they'd say, "We're taking your children." Now, you had no right to say no. They just were taken, and my grandmother was one of those that went to Carlisle, and normally what happened to the people when they got there, their personal belongings were thrown away or burned. Your hair was cut short. You had to wear a school uniform. You traveled about in the day with the sound of the bell, the classroom bell. Well, to nomadic people, we didn't have no bells, we didn't have any classrooms like that, and we didn't have things that regimented our life in that way. So it was a severe thing. But what happened was that many of our children died there. That's another topic we'll cover on a different time. But, so my grandmother, had many things that she witnessed and occurred to herself that, you people would never think would happen. In America, that this shouldn't happen, but it did happen. In fact, I'll touch about that a little bit. Now, the orange shirt. How many of you know about the orange shirt? Anybody? Not one? Well, the orange shirt started actually a couple years ago. And when they started going to the boarding schools and started digging around, they started finding thousands of our children that were never reported that were buried. Just last fall, the Sioux people, they got a huge amount back, and they had a big tribal burial. And when I say thousands, I mean many thousands. Now, how many of you heard of the red dress? Anybody? Not one? Well, I'm surprised on that. But the red dress, unfortunately, is a rather shameful thing that happens today in today's world. And what the red dress is about, because the reservations are so large and there's so few police or people that are watching, it's very easy for their Eastern European-backed gangs. And they hijack the women, and they bring them over to the Great Lakes, and they stick them on the freighters, and away they go to Europe. And that is many thousands. So nobody, just the fact that you people don't know about that, kind of shows you how well that's covered up. But if you were to go to the Canadian side, there's a Walmart that's up there, and that whole big wall is nothing but the faces of these women and children that have been taken. And most of them never come back. Very few ever seen again. So the thing about that is we feel, Native people feel, that the government is part of that in a way, because you couldn't have thousands of people continually taken and not know what's happening with that. So there was a woman up north in Canada who was a Native, and her name was Jamie Black. And Jamie Black, she started to make awareness of that. And what she did on this one highway that most of the girls were taken on, she'd get these red dresses. And every so often, she'd hang a red dress in the trees. So as you're driving down the highway, people would ask, what are these red dresses about? So what I did at our powwow, which was at Naperville about 4 years ago, something like that, I invited her down. And I said, I want you to bring your red dresses down. And again, nobody knew about what that was. And so I made that announcement to our community in Chicago and the surrounding areas that the women who were going to dance at the powwow bring their red dress. So she comes out of the background, she has all these red dresses, and she starts passing them out, and everybody thinks that we're going to go right to the arena and start dancing. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. I said, everybody put their red dresses on. I opened the back gate of Naperville, the settlement, and we went on Aurora Avenue, and we went down Aurora Avenue with the drums, and then back in and then danced. And the reason I did that, because I wanted to make awareness that there's something wrong with this government, both Canadian and ours, that we fail to see that and appreciate that, Just from the fact that you didn't hear about that kind of tells me, it's not a good thing. And there's many things that happen, and because, you live here and you live a decent life, and, everybody's busy earning money and trying to survive, that sometimes you become insulated and don't see what's happening. And everybody knows about, Africa and the starving kids, and there's sure a lot of them out there, and there really are, and all the things that are happening in Europe. But that has never stopped happening here. You know, the fact that we had the highest dropout rate. I knew a young couple, they had a 3-year-old, and then they moved out of Chicago because they wanted to be in a better place. They moved back to the res, you know, and their 4-year-old daughter was so despondent. At 4 years old, she sat on the railroad track and was killed by a train. From all over the world who were there, they're all kind of tense. It was actually a living village that was happening there. And in the process of them needing supplies, many of the other tribes who had formerly not been overly friendly because of the westward expansion were doing marvelous stuff there. They would, well, for instance, the Ho-Chunk, and they brought truckloads of wood to burn for fires. Tribe down south, Cherokee, they brought truckloads of water. And there were these warehouses that people could go if they didn't have clothes, didn't have water, and they could, you know, eat and drink and be a part of that. And the people there were very well organized. There was dumpsters, recycling was happening. Well, in the meantime, on the other side, and this was on reservation land, they had these attack dogs, and again, these people that had masks over their face. And we were heavily armed. I want to tell you the truth. We were heavily armed with prayers and drums. Prayers and drums. So the women were out one night, and they're saying prayers and they're beating the drum. And they decided they were going to set the attack dogs on the women. And if I said the women got chewed up, that would be underestimating. I still have a hard time talking about that. And later on that evening, there was one of the gals who was in the front there, and she lifted her front up. You could see how badly, you know, those dogs had hurt her. There was another woman there that had, again, she was praying on their side too, some kind of a concussion grenade rather, and blew her arm off. Now we were only there a little short time, a few days, but most of the people were there for months. And because the weather out there is really cold during the winter, what they would do is they would drive these trucks that had water cannons on, and they would hose the people down. They'd hose your tent down. Now, can you imagine if you're way out in the plains, there's no house, there's no place to go, you're soaked to the bone, your clothes are wet, your tent is wet, and how long are you going to be able to take that? I know at one time up on the ridge, they had 3 unmarked tanks. Now, again, I'm talking about America. How do you have 3 unmarked tanks wandering around the reservation land in America? Something wrong with that. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because what you do to one color, potentially you can do to any color. And that's where the problem is. We have to be very vigilant continually that our rights are not eroded away further than what they already are, and what I fear is coming in the future. We have to be vigilant. You know, for us to have the power of prayer is a powerful thing. I don't care what religion you are. I've often had many elders tell me, if you pray from the heart, there's no wrong way. You know, if it's got a good spirit, Creator will bless you. You know, and I believe that. Now, it may surprise you, and I'm very traditional in the way I was brought up and my thoughts on that, but I'm also a Methodist. So I'm a combination of many things, and I learned from many different elders who have taught me good things over the years, you know. And one of the elders that I kind of admire in a certain way is Gandhi. You know, we must be that change we hope to see. We are that change. If we're not good, we're not going to project good. Each one of us has to be a beacon, you know. And I'm going to get married this year, and she often reminds me what I often say is that woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, and we have many choices we can do with our life, you know, and we don't. You know, sometimes we just sit there and we kind of waste day by day, and we don't, you know, have a say in what's going on. We should have a say. You know, our churches, no matter what faith, they should be packed. If ever we need to have churches packed, it's right now. You know, with stuff that's going on in the world, and you know, this threat of nuclear, whatever's going on, you know, we need to have Creator bless us and give us that special way. So, I was talking about land issues, and there was a site that, one of the things that I do personally is protection of our Native American burial sites, and I'm well noted from that. And we started out many years ago in New Lenox, there was a 3 or 4 year confrontation. Now, how many of you have ever heard of the American Indian Movement? Anybody? Okay. Well, the American Indian Movement was something that was born out of desperation, and particularly up on the reses out in Sioux country, with Dickie Wilson and some of the tribal leaders who were being paid off. If you did not adhere to the government policy, you had a drive-by go by, and they killed hundreds of Native people just for being traditional. So the people had nobody to protect them. The government was protecting. In fact, the government was issuing these weapons and ammunition to these goon squads, which was the tribal police that were under control of the government. And the AIM came out, and they were rough. We had to protect the people. Now the problem, what we had with that, is that the movement started gaining strength. The government started to put spies in there. They wanted to find out who was who, what was going on. And our intention was to protect the people. That was the key thing, protect the people. So when it got to the point where nationally you didn't know everybody that was in the movement, we decided to unhook from that. So we started as the Will County AIM, and we became Midwest Soaring through that. And we were actually able to achieve much more because we knew everybody was done right. And what I tell our young people, who even today tend to be overzealous, they're not elders yet, they're not thinking about things. And I always tell people, this is true. The power of the heart exceeds the power of the fist, always. You may win a battle, but you're not going to win the war with the power of the fist. Not where it matters. So, since I've been doing what I've been doing, I've been an activist for about 58 years of my life. I have worked in 37 different states on different issues, up in Canada, a little bit of Hawaii, a little bit of South America. I was the only Native that was ever on the Governor's Interstate Indian Conference, over 2 or 3 governors. And as I said before, it's a really difficult job trying to inspire the young people, trying to get them moving. And I'll talk a little bit about New Lenox. New Lenox was a place that was a little bit near Joliet. And there was a Native burial ground there, which was a Miami burial ground. And our intention was to protect that. Now, we knew the Park District had intentions of digging the whole thing up, and they were going to build buildings, Olympic-sized pool, and all that. And in the beginning, I approached them. I said, we can do something together. We can make this really a good project. But they were determined they were going to try to work around me without involving Native people. So what happened was one day we called a convoy of people to go to a park on Forest Preserve on Route 45. And we had a prayer. We had about 150 people. And then from there, we went over to New Lenox in a small park there. We rented that. And we had a prayer there. And while we were there, one of the guys for our next stop, he came over to me and said, Joe, he said, there's a heavily armed army waiting for you. Now, I didn't like the sound of heavily armed, and he told me what was over there. And I looked at our women and our children and our elders, and I got them all together, and I say, I don't expect you to go there. They don't know who we are or what we're doing there. They had no idea about our respect for our people. I said, you don't have to go there. You did a really good thing coming so far. 150 people, every single one of them went down that dirt road. Now, you being spiritual people, you'll understand what I'm going to say right now, how powerful this is. We're going down this dirty road, and there's over 150 heavily armed, all the police in the area, shotguns, mirror glasses, the whole thing. There's FBI, there's camera crews, and there's a blockade blocking the entrance to where the burial's at, which is formerly a farm field. And the 3 of them standing behind there says, well, why are you here today? And I said, we're here today to pray for our ancestors. You're disturbing their sleep with that bulldozer. And I pointed at bulldozer. So they went by back there. They had a little talk, and they come back, and they said to me, they says, we 3 had decided that we're going to give you the right to pray today. And I stuck my finger in his nose. I said, no, Creator gave us that right to pray. He said, you misunderstand me. We're here today to pray for our people. So with that, he went back again, and he comes back over again. He said, well, we decided we're going to move the gate. He says, but we don't want you to desecrate the ground. Now, can you imagine that? Not to desecrate the ground. So there were some people, since my last generation, who never had the opportunity as Native people to respond to any issue because we were so beaten back. There wasn't anybody championing our issues. There wasn't any aim. There wasn't anybody nationally. Sorry about that. There wasn't anybody nationally to defend us. So one of those elders was standing in a wheelchair. She's in a wheelchair next to me, and her name was Helen. And she hadn't got up for many years. She was, very ill, and she was so proud of being with us. She's in her wheelchair, and I couldn't describe it. She's trying as hard as she could to stand up. And we could have helped her up, but I knew it was important to her that she did that on her own. She was making a statement. So when she finally did stand up, I had a person on the left and a person on the right, and we held her up as she walked that half a block to the site. Now, Archie White, he was a Sioux. He was our medicine person at that time. So what happened is they moved the gate, and we're like 4 abreast, and we're escorted on both sides with these heavily armed people. So we get over to the burial ground, and we're in a circle, and they're around us in 2 circles. And Archie, he says, grandfather, bless these poor ignorant guards and their family. And he stopped for a second. They went to their side, unclipped their guns, and they're ready to steal. One's hand's on the shotgun, one's on the holster. And again, we were heavily armed with drums and prayers. Didn't have a stick or a stone or a mean word. Heavily armed with prayers and drums. So Archie went out again. He says, grandfather, bless these poor ignorant guards and their family. And they realized that, in fact, he was doing that. And what they did was they clipped their gun, took their mirror glasses off, put their hands behind, and they prayed with us. Now, Archie, he had a wonderful way with people telling the truth, and I believe the Creator blessed his words, what we did. So that went on to start a 3-year standing honor guard that we were there every day. Cold, rainy days, and the people that we had there at the entrance, sometimes we had 5, sometimes we had 50. So one time we had the Miami Nation from Indiana came out, a whole bunch of them. And that amount, changed. It kind of made the issue known in the Midwest area that gave people a lot of hope. But there was one day, a few weeks after that, where the mayor says, we're going to have this groundbreaking day. And I called it the Shiny Shovel Day. So he announced the time, so I announced the same time. We're going to do a prayer at the same time. So he put this lie in the papers. He says, Joe Standerbear is planning this armed thing. There's going to be guns. There's going to be all kind of stuff. And I said, no, there's never, ever, ever Native people do a prayer or something. Never any of that. So I told the paper we'd give him his time to do it first, and we would go in afterwards. Now, it came the day of that ceremony, and I still remember looking in the distance, and I seen this whole caravan of all those police again, and the FBI and the camera crews, and the third or fourth car from the front was the mayor. And we had one car there, and the 3 of us were standing in front of the car, and you can see the mayor's car slows down, and he rolls the window down, he starts laughing, he goes, 1, 2, 3, you can see him counting, 1, 2, 3. He thought it was real funny, there's 3 of us. Well, he went in there, and they had the ceremony, and when he come out, it wasn't so funny because I had both sides of the highway lined as far as you can see in both directions, and our people just stood there, and we looked at him. Now, during that time there were many things that these people that were in that area, they had kind of the good old boy mentality. They did many things that were trying to discredit us. One of the things they did was one day, it was a really hot day, and this truck pulls up. And I knew right away this guy was not one of ours. He said, I bet you guys are really thirsty. And he popped us up there, and there's a lot of beer and ice. And I see it down about a half a block away, there's a guy with a camera. I walked over to that back of that thing, and I slammed that thing down. I says, "Get the heck out of here." Not quite those words, but get the heck out of here. And there were many things of that nature that they did. And I was ever vigilant that that did not happen. Everything we did was the right way. And it grew a strong solidarity between our people. And from a long distance away, there was an orange fence that went around there. And the people that would come and go would put prayer ties on there from different states. And this prayer fence had many, many prayers on there. Just thinking back, some of those people, most of them have passed away since then. But that journey has taken me on many different places. What Midwest Soaring stands for is Save Our Ancestors' Remains and Resources Indigenous Network Group. So any of the issues that cover our people, we try to get involved in as best we can, as best the money will stretch. We've saved something in the order of 1,900 acres since I've started of Illinois. We work with Pat Quinn, say Plum Island with the Audubon, Sierra Club rather, and we were able to save that. So what we do is we win one battle, we move on to the next. So our headquarters right now, we're located down in Lockport. We're in the 1860 train station. I always say call before, and I have some brochures over in case you're interested in that. So we are open on Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays, but always call first. And locally, I'm very happy to say that tomorrow we have a meeting with the Glen Ellen members of their people over there. And for 7 months, we've been working with trying to get the lease for the McKee House. Now, the McKee House is on 263 acres. It's got trees that are 150 years old, has never been cut down. It's got some village sites that were there many, many years ago. And we're going to try to raise up $2 million to redo the inside, which needs a lot of work, needless to say. We're trying to do some programming. So we hope that we're able tomorrow to finally get this contract nailed down. And, it's not easy to, every penny we get, we try to use as extremely wisely as we can. Now, I mentioned before about how we try to, pardon 1 minute, I don't know how much time, am I getting close on time? Okay, good. I'm told we're going to do 2 or 3 different sessions during the year, so that'd be good. So that's way too much material to cover in one time, but just trying to glaze over some of the things. So, again, I was talking about how do we inspire our young people? And it was, I believe it was the year 2000. We were at a powwow, and a woman come over to me and says, "I'm a member of the Plain Dirt Garden Club. We want to partner with you." So she started talking, and what she said, I thought sounded pretty good. So it was this Navy Pier Flower and Plant Show, big show downtown. So we did they had all native plants that were in full bloom. We had a waterway, we had a waterfall, we had a living village, we had people on the set, dressed. We got viewed by, I think it was 170,000 people during that time. It gave us a lot of notoriety and a lot of contacts. But what it gave us the most, we won the top 4 awards. Now, bear in mind, this is the major thing for the growers and people who is their business to try to have the best for their promoting their business. And to have all volunteers win the top 4 awards. And the judges says, this thing was so fantastic that we wanted to give you all 10, but they didn't because they couldn't risk that loss of revenue from the rest of the people. It was kind of funny because we were pretty close with them, the garden club. And they said, "We want you to come out next year, and we got this idea. We're going to have like this ancient setting with like a mammoth, and we want you guys to dress like cavemen." We're not cavemen, So I declined respectfully on that, and that's where that went with that. But getting people's awareness on issues that are pretty well hidden, and they are hidden. The press has got this unstated thing that they do not report hardly anything that happens on the res. Now, if that's not so, how many of you guys have heard anything about a res this year? Okay, how about the last 5 years? When Columbine had that massacre to happen, we had a similar thing that happened on one of the residents up north, and there was a few more kids. One day in the news, now the Columbine thing went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Anything that has anything with Native people, generally you don't hear anything about it at all unless you're in that particular area, and you might hear something on it. So bringing awareness to these issues is a pretty hard thing to do. Now you might wonder, about how I deal with the Remain issue. Many years ago, and most of you are old enough to remember when the newspapers reported anything they found, it was all skeletons. We found X amount of skeletons. And one day the United Press called me, and they says, "How do you feel about the word skeleton?" I said, "No." I said, "I don't care what nation or what people they belong to. They're not skeletons. These are human remains." And I was the one to change that from skeletons in the newspaper. You almost never see that. These are human remains. I don't care what people they come from. So that was something that was a major win for us on that too. Even taking the squaw out of anything that has a squaw name in this state. And I won't go into what that means, but it's not an Indian woman. It's a very derogative sexual term. So I believe there's no squaw name left in this state, so we took that off. But all these things, as you might imagine, they don't happen in a day or two or three. It needs a lot of grassroots support and a lot of effort. Our first time down at Springfield, and this is the truth. I still think of this, and it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. They had a Senate hearing. We had an important issue. So they decided they were going to have a Senate hearing, and they said, "We're going to allow you guys 3 speakers." Well, 2 minutes apiece. Now, this is an important issue. 2 minutes apiece, 3 speakers. So the first one started speaking, he finished, and I noticed one of the senators started rapping her fingers, and the person got halfway through, and she stood up, and her exact words were, "What more do you people want? We put you on the nickel." Now, can you imagine that? What more do you people want? We put you on the nickel. Now, recently in Oklahoma, over a long land issue, and I thought it was kind of, I don't know whether it's comical or not, but kind of ironic. The tribe got back a huge section of land, and they had all the press was out there, and these farmers were going, "They're taking our land. How dare they take our land?" And I'm going, "Yeah, no, taking our land." Well, anyway, so the thing of it is to keep our children motivated. We do hand out scholarships, at least 2 or 3 a year. And as you might imagine, I take those scholarships pretty seriously. I don't do any favoritism in that. We take the applications in, and it might surprise you. I don't go for the A student. I go for the person that I think is going to be the best tribal leader. So every applicant I get, I call, we have long conversations, and I say, "Well, how come your grades are this way now and they were that way then? What was the change? What made that happen?" And normally on the res, it's normally living situations, either parents that were abusive or alcoholic or something, and that student that comes from a D level or F level and it goes up to an A, I'm interested in that person because they have persevered and they have proved their worth. Now, someone who's got an A student, I grant you they're trying hard and they're doing good, but they're probably going to find a job pretty easy, a lot easier than the person that's not. So I'm more geared towards activism, what they're doing and what they're doing it for and why they're doing it for. That to me is a real important thing. And I have to say, for all the scholarships I've handed out over the years, Soreness handed out, that almost to a one, these people have persevered and have proven their worth. So I'm very proud that we did our part and still doing our part. Last year we had Comcast Foundation that gave us $5,000 to hand out 5 this year. And when we have the summer solstice down at the Key, that'll be on June 19th, it'll be 11 o'clock. And I try to highlight different Native people. So this June, what we're going to have half of the Aztec dance troupe come out. So you're going to see an Aztec prayer out there. It's a prayer for the season change. And that's something I want people to see, that, of the 350 languages we once had, we only have 150 left right now. The other 200 are extinct. They're gone. We're trying to hang on to what we have. Some of the schools, I have to laugh because, they say we're trying to give the kids an immersion where we want to teach them 10 words a year. 10 words, it's not going to quite do it. So we want to have, progress on that. In a Native school, a Native meeting, if you were to go to, like right now I'm watching you, if you were to go to a Native tribal meeting or a Native meeting of any sort, you would know it's something drastically different than what you're doing. Our people, which I do myself, is we're taught never to look, very seldom look at your people. We look to different ways, and we're listening with our heart, with our spirit, and we feel that by continually looking at you, we're challenging you, we're confronting you. So we will glance at you momentarily, but we don't overly look at you. And that's one of the things you would think, well, gee, they're not listening. Well, we are listening. We are watching. There's a lot of stuff that Native people do that's exactly opposite of what you would do. For instance, a handshake. Now, in the European way, a man goes to a man, we want to crush each other's hand, crush that hand. Well, we don't do that. If you're an elder, what you want is someone to come out and put your hand in your hand and shake it respectfully, but we're not out to try to break your fingers. We could do that, but we don't want to do that. We want to just respect you. And that word respect, of all the thousands of kids I've taught over the years, when I go to a classroom, I often ask, the young people, what important word starts with L? And almost always you see the hand rise up and they all say love. I said, that's good. And then I go, what important word starts with an R? I've had 2 students raise their hand that got the word respect. And that's part of the problem we have today, is that respect is not there. I don't know if it comes in a video or it comes from parents that are too busy or what's going on with that, but to Native people, there's 2 words that starts with an R that are extremely important, and that is reverence and respect. I respect everything that I see. I want to be a friend to everything I see, unless they prove to be elsewise. I would rather extend my hand, and that reverence, getting up in the morning and looking at the gifts the Creator has put down for all of us. How often you do that, every day, every morning. I get up and I look at those trees and I watch the season change and I watch the green bloods. Now the green bloods are the plants, and anything that has chloroform, that's their blood, the green bloods, And sometimes people say, well, gee, Native people are all heathen. No, that's not true. We're not all heathen, and not heathen at all, in fact. When we're praying outside, say if we're outside, we have a ceremony, we're praying for the gifts that the Creator has put there. Now, you may call him God or whatever name you want to put it. We call it Creator. Same thing. And I often tell people, we have a keen respect for our families, for the military, for veterans, for all the things that matter. And I say, how are we different than you? We're the same thing. And speaking of the military, we have the highest amount of any people that have served in the military. About 80% of our people, believe it or not, men and women, have served in the military. Now that might surprise you when you consider what this country's done, but if you were to go to powwow and you were to knock over a flag, you would start a commotion, because we respect not necessarily the flag, what that flag has done to us, but we respect this country, which we still protect. We're protecting this land for all of us. So that, I want you to make no mistake on that. Even the code talkers, they were responsible for saving many lives with, using their language, which the Japanese couldn't crack. But they were not aware of why they were there, really. They had a military Marine Guard, and they didn't know this until after the war. But if that Marine felt that Navajo or Hopi was going to get captured, they were to kill that person. They didn't know that. They didn't want that code out, and they didn't tell the guys, this guy is here not to save your life. He's here to kill you if you're going to get captured. Now, I knew several of the code talkers, most of them have all passed away, and I think there's one or two left. But they did that with a good heart, and I don't know how they would have felt about that had they known the truth at the beginning of the whole thing, but, that's the truth of it, So I know I bounced around a little bit, and we got a little bit of time here, but, this journey has taken me many places. I do namings, I do land acknowledgements. I did Loyola University last week or 2 weeks ago, and we did a land acknowledgement over there. And it was one of the Franciscans. The reason I went there is they wanted a land acknowledgement, which we did, and they also wanted somebody in the school was kind of protesting that mural that was in the library there. And they have this in the central library. There's this big mural, 20 foot by maybe 30 foot high. And I went there, and I went there early, and I put a chair there, and I sat there for a half hour. I was looking at that mural intently, on every part of it. I wanted to see what that mural was about. And a lot of the students thought that it represented church over the people. And I looked at it, and knowing some of the stories that I do, I looked at it, and I gave the mural a fair shake. So when the conference started, we had 4 or 5 people. The head of the student body, we had a Franciscan who was sitting next to me. And because he knew my history, he was sitting next to me, and he was like shaking. He didn't know what I was going to say about it. And I started out by saying this, which I say to you too. Not one of us can change the past. It's flowed along. It's done its course. But today and tonight, we can change tomorrow. And I know that's true, if we want to. So I told him, I said, the people in those days, they didn't have any military choice after a while. They didn't have any say-so. And I just asked the Franciscan, I says, did any one of those people, any of those tribes over the Great Lakes, ask you to be there? And he said, no. I said, you were assuming that our people were not worthy, that we didn't have our own culture, that we didn't have our own spirituality. And again, I say, we believe in Creator, And protecting that site in New Lenox, there was an elder there, Laura Shelders. She was the last fluent Miami-speaking person. And she told me something interesting. She says it was passed down through our word of people. They said the person, Jesus Christ, he came to that site long before Europe, and he came there and he talked to the people. So they had a good belief in that, and a spiritual person, if you do something the right way, is always a good thing. And unfortunately, not everybody's got a good heart, and they have their own motives, and they change things for their own purpose. But if you're a spiritual person, you're here, I know you're here, spiritual people, and that's your leader here, and I can still see from his eyes, he's a good man. He's not going to steer you the wrong way. And that's true. I've seen many, many good leaders over the past. As I said before, we don't need less, we need more. We need more good leaders. We need more people sitting in these pews, and it's not any one person's job, it's all of our jobs. The kids should be listening, the kids should be learning, kids should be doing things, we're going through this cultural change, and some of the change is good, and some of them maybe not good. That's each congregation determine their direction. But it wants to be a place where the family can come and pray and have community together and enjoy yourself together and do what you have to do in a good way, because that's important. It is. So anyway, going back to Starved Rock, when we won that and it become Plum Island become part of the park, now it's a dedicated eagle sanctuary, and we had this big ceremony for Pat Quinn, and we gave him a blanket and some different things. Now, I believe that we have the left, we have the right, and people get so stuck on either side of that. There was a time when the Second War, when whether it was Kennedy or it was Bush, people were fighting for this country. They were Americans. And I'm not sure what happened to change that, but it shouldn't be, them, it should be us together, respectful of each other's different ways. And as I said before, there's no wrong way to pray if you pray from your heart. It's got to come from that heart. And I've been to some churches, and I don't see that here, but I've been to some churches where half the people are sitting there and they're dozing away, and I don't know why. It's a sacred thing to come together, spend that time together. Well, anyway, so I've seen a lot of different things happen, a lot of different people, and some of the things you see will break your heart. I've done namings and at funerals, and it's the problem with there's so very few elders left that know anything, that a lot of different tribes that don't have an elder anymore in this state or in the area, and they call me to do their ceremony. And I always tell them I can do it in the way I best know, in my way, and I'll try to adhere to your way a little bit. But there's no one native exactly the same way we do things. We're all different on how we do it. So this was something that was kind of interesting. I was called to do a funeral in Indiana. And a friend of mine would pull up in the yard, and there's yards in farm country. It's all full of family. And I talked to the family, and I said, well, what did Grandma like? And I got to know her through what they were saying about her. And then I said, well, where did your grandma, where she want to be, thrown in the wind to? She said, well, she loved that hill over there. In the distance, about a mile away, there was a great big hill. It had oaks growing around there. So I said, okay, everybody get in the car. And we rode down the road and over the barbed wire fence, and we're standing in this oak grove, and it's high in this hill. And I'm looking at them, I'm looking at the ground, I'm looking at the wind. And I said, this is the spot you want? And they goes, yes, it is. So we did the ceremony, and off Grandma goes in the wind. But just at that second, there was a terrible downdraft. Whew. And I'm looking where Grandma went. And I was very hesitant to look at them because Grandma was now part of the cow pie. So, so I'm looking at them, and they knew I felt uncomfortable, and all of a sudden they all bust out laughing, And sometimes it's funny like that, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's terrible, terrible times. But, over the years I've handled many different people, many different situations, even with the reburials. There's only 3 of us know where the remains go to, and that's Creator, the spirits, and myself, And I try to put the remains back in places that won't be disturbed again, and that's very important to me. Whenever I handle any new land issue, I'm very careful to instruct the people that own that land, do not highlight the mounds or the burial ground, anything about them. Don't talk about them, because people are going to come out and they're going to loot them, because they have this stupid curiosity that somehow we're aphrodisiacs or something, and I do my best to hide them, I could tell you many stories about that too. There was I won't tell you what college town, but there was this dentist, and his son was also a dentist, and the father had died, passed away, and the son inherited a house. Now he had a much younger girlfriend. And he had this really strange thing in which they'd go to the house at night, they'd do everything they had, cutting the grass. It was always late at hours. The light was never on, even though it was right in the middle of town, and he had money. So one day he says to his girlfriend, he says, I'm going to write this note, and we're going to the cabin by the lake, and I'm going to set myself on fire, and when I've totally incinerated myself, I want you to give this note to the police. And he did, and she did. And the police come out, and they looked at him, and he was surely incinerated. And they took the note, and they declared that the house was now had to be cleaned out. Well, the house had 30 remains that were hidden in walls and all kind of stuff that was hidden. So I went there with the intention of blessing the house and to release some of that negativity. And the guard who was watching the house, he said, why don't you come down to the city hall and down to the police station, crime lab, and we want to show you some of the things we got. Well, they had like these 3 big toilet paper sized boxes full of skulls, with 30 skulls. And I looked at them, and I, having a knowledge of the anatomy, and patina on things. I knew pretty much, how old they were and who they were. One of them had the skull cut in half and using that for an ashtray, which greatly angered me. So after I told him all that, they had this cabinet, and he opens this drawer, and he puts this aluminum tinfoil about that big around, about that long, and he puts this on top of the cabinet, and he rolls it out. He said, "We can't figure out what this is." So I'm looking at him, looking at that, and I said, "As you guys are a crime lab?" He goes, "Yes, we can't figure that out." I said, "That was somebody's face that was shaved off, and it's not one of ours." So with that, he looked extra hard, and he realized that it was. And he said, "Don't tell anybody about it." So I've been telling everybody for years now. But anyway, what happened with that, because of that, there wasn't any living relatives still alive. So we had the mother exhumed, and the DNA did not match supposedly son. So I uncovered a murder. And it's not the only one I've uncovered over the years, but that's, one of our stories I tell. So many people try to get away with doing different things, and I'm very careful that when we get involved in anything, that there's never any negativity to it. I value our Saurian name very greatly, and I'm never, ever going to be bought off or do something not in the right way. That name was too hard fought by too many people. Many, many people that they gave everything they had to get us as far as we are, and I respect that. So I know we're getting kind of short on time here, and I don't want to belabor you. Let's see what kind of time we got here. Okay. Now, I hope I didn't offend anybody. If I did not intend to. But you need to know the truth, and you need to respect your building here and your leader here, and I respect him. I can tell he's a good man. I like that. I'm always happy to see that. I worked a lot with the Methodist Northern Conference over the years. And some of my people, which are anti-religion, they go, "Why are you doing that? With all the stuff that would happen in Sand Creek and all that." And again, I told them the same thing. We can't change yesterday, but today we're going to change tomorrow. And do you know, because of my friendship with many of the Methodists over a wide area, they're supportive of our powwow, scholarships, special things that come our way, because they realize that that's the way to change things, is to make things better. So I'm a very strong believer in putting that hand out there, to make friends. It's going to make a better world. What we're going to do globally, I don't know. I have fears that some idiot someplace is going to press a button, and most of us are just regular people. We don't have any say in that, other than praying for a better future, better leaders. And I don't know why, with all the billions of people we have on this planet, we get stuck with people that we got on top. I mean, if that's the best we got, something is not going right. Something is not happening, and I believe in the best person for the best job. There's good people on the left, there's good people on the right, and there's also bad people on the left and the right. And to know, which we all know, that there's millionaires on both sides of it. So, we really have to judge, not listen to the media, but listen to what we see and what we hear, and see if they're walking their talk. And walking their talk is a real important thing. If you say you're going to do something, you do that thing. You don't change it or modify it because the flavor of the time has changed. You stand up for what you believe in, and you do that. Well, I've spoken for an hour now, and I hope I haven't bored you too much, but I'm happy that I've been here today, and hope to come again. I'd like to hear some questions, and I'll try to answer them best to my ability. So do we have some questions there? Come on, hands up. Now, I'm a little bit hard of hearing, so speak up. Step forward, step.
All right. You mentioned the McKee building, a house, and the property that it's on.
No, it's not the Forest Preserve itself. The Forest Preserve owns the land.
Joseph, could you repeat the question just so people on Zoom can hear it?
We're asking about if the land in McKee House is part of the deal, and is not. It's 263 acres, and that land belongs to the Forest Preserve. They take great care of it, and ours is just a footprint of the house and the driveway and out front. And we're more than happy with that. So we have no intentions, and nor would we, of chopping any trees down or any clearing. We want to keep it just the way it is.
So what you want to do is preserve, because I don't know the background on this. So
Well, the key house was roughly made about 1936 by WPA. You know, if you look at that limestone, it's kind of a special job they did. And for those who probably not been in the inside, the outside is it's in pretty good shape by and large. It needs a little clean, but nothing drastic. It does need doors and windows, and because of the roof leaking, which now there's a tarp on the roof, there is quite a bit of work needs to be done. There's mold, asbestos, lead paint, so all that is pretty expensive to mediate, so that has to be come out of there. So we're trying to raise up $2 or $3 million, which will be rehabbing of the house and also some funding for programs in the future. One of the problems that we're going to have because of that building being that large, you might imagine the heating and air conditioning bill. And somebody suggested to me, said, well, you guys don't need no air conditioning. I told him, I said, no, that's not true. You know I need it because I'm going to die of the heat. You know, we have different artifacts and things that are temperature fragile. I have a 1937 bald eagle, a golden eagle rather, that was given to us, you know, and things like that that need to be in a temperature controlled climate. Many of the artifacts that we have in the building or will have in the building are one-of-a-kind stuff, you know, and at first we had a debate whether the building would be open to everybody. And I said what I want to do is really do the smaller building is going to be the classrooms, open for many different clubs and people that do many things. But the inside, because we're going to have our artifacts in our office, we'll have to be, staff will have to be in the building when those people do visit. But we don't want to have 10,000 keys floating around. You wouldn't want someone coming to your house and going through your drawers and taking stuff out, and we don't want it either, you know. Things happen. So I hope I answered your question.
So this is going to be a museum?
It'll be a gallery, it'll be a museum, it'll be a place to do special programming, many different things that are going to be unique. It's going to be a model for the Midwest states. You know, it's not going to be a little low-class thing, it's going to be a model, a beacon.
Where
And
is this house? Where is this property?
Where? If you're on St. Charles Road, I believe the address is 1104. It's that big limestone building.
And it's part of the big forest preserve?
Right. You can't possibly miss it. It's been there for a long time.
Sure we passed it. All right, thank you.
Questions? Anybody?
So you talked about doing a land acknowledgement at Loyola. And what was that exactly that you did there?
Well, land acknowledgement is a really important thing, and I'm doing a lot of those in the last 6 months. And I think this thing with the COVID and the BLM and things like that have happened, changed people's hearts a little bit. Now, I'm a strong believer, and that's the whole teaching by itself, that all four colors are equal. So I don't support just one color, I support all the colors. When we highlight just one, we're not realizing that all of them are equally sacred. And that's the way I was raised. It's on my shirt here, I've got the medicine wheel, it's the circle here. And if you notice, those four colors of mankind are all equal. It's what mankind did to make them unequal. It wasn't creator, and mankind made them unequal. So we're very, it's the way I live my life. I believe in that. So that's you know, okay. Any more questions? Did I answer that completely?
So the question was, so the land acknowledgement
Yeah.
that you did at Loyola, like, so when you do land acknowledgements, what does that involve and where does that go?
Well, what you're doing is giving thanks to all the people that were here. Now, what typically the main mistake that most people do trying to craft that is they do a little bit of reading, they go, we thank the Potawatomi. Now, the Potawatomi are my language group, the Algonquin-speaking people, and I tell them, no, don't do that. They're just the last. For the last 15, 20,000 years, the countless hundreds of tribes that passed through and lived there, you don't want to thank just one tribe. You want to thank all the indigenous nations that ever lived there, whose remains are part of that soil. All the people. So that, what that acknowledgement is, it's actually acknowledging that, something was taken, and that at least an apology should be given, and realizing that other people love this place severely. Now, when I talk about that, I want to mention something about that too, just briefly. When you think about Native people, we never had a dump, never had toxics, never had a jail, never had taxes, never had politicians other than the chief. And if the chief wasn't good, the tribe voted him out by not supporting him. And all the things that we have today, we didn't have then. And I'm wondering, how could we digress so far, and call ourselves, civilized, I guess, I don't know. Having the respect, and again, I say the word reverence and respect, truly feeling that in your heart when you see something, and being generally glad to see a friend or something. And, I see many families that, they have family outings, and before the end of the outing, the parents are half sloshed. No, I don't drink, I don't smoke, don't do any drugs, don't want them. Creator gave me this body to take care of, and I may eat a little much, but I'm not going to take away that gift from what it should be. Those young people, they watch what you do. If you're acting not in a good manner, you're imprinting that on them. And there's no thing about that. You are their teacher. Each one of us is a beacon. Each one of us is a beacon. If you're shining dimly, well, that doesn't speak well of, the energy that you're projecting. Shine bright, do something good. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Don't do it. Do it. Get out there, move around. I don't care what you're doing, whether you're gardening or recycling or whatever you're doing. Do it. Do it. If your neighbor's not recycling, so what? Recycle. If you want to plant some pollinators and give something to the butterflies and bees, do it. You got to judge what you feel is important. And don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to be a human being. Do not be afraid to be a human being, what you should be. Each one of you. Each one of you. So any more questions?
I have a flaky question from behind you.
Come closer. I'm not hearing you.
Is that me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
He's got somebody in there.
flaky question.
So is there a question on Zoom?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. My question's kind of flaky. I wondered whether Indigenous people would be willing to share songs with outsiders, or are they too personal, too much grounded in experience to share? But if they are shared, how would an outsider go about learning some of these songs?
So the question was, are there songs that can be shared, or is that too sacred of a sharing?
That's a good question. There's long been a debate between our people and those that want to follow our ways, how much should be taught and how much shouldn't be taught. And I think that when you're a spiritual person, for you not to teach somebody else what you know, you're not acknowledging that special gift. There were so many people have misappropriated a sweat lodge. And what a sweat lodge is, it's a place that in the past is a place where certain families have had people in there that endured the sweat lodge as suffering for the people. And if you come out of a sweat lodge and you're happy and you're laughing and you're giggling, you haven't been there for the right reason. It's not a place that you're going to come out in a comical or happy way. You're suffering for the people. And there's certain things that if a sweat lodge is being done appropriately will happen. Certain feelings that will happen. There was some people on one of the residents, I won't say where it was, but they knew that people were questing for this experience for a sweat lodge. So we had these buses full of people would come, and the sweat lodge is generally pretty low where you have to crawl into a door. And there's rocks that are heated outside, and every so often the door opens up and more rocks are heated on with water, and it's a pretty hot thing. So what he was doing, he had the people go in there fully dressed. He had a big fire in there, a plastic tent, and they've charged them ungodly amounts of money to stand there and then walk through. But any ceremony, if any elder or any person doing that ceremony charges you, it's not the real thing. There's never a charge for any ceremony. What we do is we acknowledge that leader or that place, and we may pass something along to that person, but that person never asks for anything. We automatically acknowledge that and give that freely, just for that reason, I'm very careful where I go with my spirituality, and I feel spiritual here. I feel a gift here. Even my own church, I feel that, that spirit there. If I go out west, I'm standing on a butte looking at the mountains, I feel that same feeling. If I'm at a cemetery with my wife, I feel the same feeling. If you're a spiritual being, you're going to feel that no matter where you go. That's part of who you are. And if you don't feel that, you need to ask yourself why. Why am I not feeling that? And that might lead you on an interesting journey, and who knows where that journey is going to take you. But you should feel that same way everywhere. I remember when Gandhi died, I was a little kid, and I think it was Delhi, and he was wrapped up in like this cocoon, and he floated from hand to hand to hand, and there was, I don't know how many thousand people were there, but his remains just went all the way around. Now, he was loved by the people, but his own family were not too crazy about him because he was always gone helping the people. So it's kind of ironic that a price you pay doing what you love to do and what you're prone to do, and sometimes it has hard family consequences. Speaking for myself and the people that do what I do, there's very few of us that are still doing the remains, and probably the last in this state that handles the remains. And Marie Pearson was Yankton Sioux. She was one of my elders that I learned much from. Now, when her husband worked for IDOT, they had a cemetery they went into. They were going to move the road. So what happened was all the non-native people that were interred got reburied in another cemetery with coffins, and the few native people they found that were there before the whites, they got put in museums. So she protested that. She walked barefoot across from side to side of the state, and she was able to create 4 cemeteries for our people, and she's also the cultural aide for 3 or 4 governors. It's people like that stood up for the people that really sacrificed their life, sacrificed their life. Anymore, now I apologize, I'm a little hard of hearing, I'm trying to get a hearing aid, don't have it yet, so I'm trying to hear what you're saying, but, I hope I answered that question okay. Is that good? Yeah. Anything else? No?
Well, I think, we invited you here for an hour, and we've got to do more than that, so and you did say, we talked about having you back.
I would like to. How do you feel about that? You want to learn some more things? Okay, good. And again, it was not my intention to say anything to hurt anybody, but these are things that I speak from the truth, and you need to know, because what one color goes through, all can go through, We must protect freedom, and the only way to do that is to stand up and, Thank you.
Well, you've given us words to hold on to, like respect and reverence, our heart and our spirit, and the Creator, and those are all gifts. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Zoom people, thank you too.
So for those on Zoom, there are some brochures here in person. You can come get them. They'll be in the narthex if we have extras, and if we don't, we'll get more. And I don't know if we have a date when you'll be back, but we will. Do we have a date? No, not yet. I see some heads going, but we will get one, and we'll get that publicized. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Zoom people. Good night.